Comics Inebriated, a podcast about the history of fiction and nonfiction in comics, along with current events, hosted by comic creators Liana Kangas and permanent guest Matt Emmons.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Comics Inebriated. I'm typically your resident guest, but today I'm stepping up and I'm going to be your temporary host. So today with us, we have Sherron.
Hello, hello.
And introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself and then tell listeners how we met.
Alrighty. So my name is Sherron. I wear a couple of different hats in the comic industry. I am a professional artist and a professional writer, and I am also a professional educator. I teach at SCAD, Savannah College of Art and Design, while I also make my books. I'm mostly well known for my license work, but I am lucky enough to be working on creator-owned and shifting away from the kid stuff and into the horror things these days, which is where my heart lies. Making weird-ass horror. Oh, can I curse on this, by the way?
Yes, I was going to tell you earlier that you could, but I love having everyone ask. I think it's great.
I meant to ask before we hit record, and, well, too late.
Even better. So far, everyone has asked, and I've consciously chosen not to tell everyone until they swear and like, is that okay?
It just makes me laugh just because I listen to a lot of podcasts, and I always love the whole like, oh, is it okay if I curse on the show?
That's why I want it in here. I'm like, that's my favorite time. Right. And then, how did we meet?
We met. It was Heroes, wasn't it? It was obviously not this year. It was the year before. Mm-hmm. So, 2019. Oh my God, COVID brain is real. I can't keep track of time.
Was that 2019? Yeah, obviously.
It was last summer, so I guess that's 2019.
That feels so much further away.
And we went to that silly Korean Southern barbecue fusion place with the weird bro bar.
Yeah.
And I bought that bracelet off of that kid hustler, who was charming.
I missed that part. When was that? I missed that.
He was charming as hell, and we did dinner at Heroes, and the rest is history. So
yeah, pretty much.
I guess thanks. Shout out to Maria Anger for I believe. They were the one who'd made the introduction. So
I think Marie and Liana are pretty much my through line for having introduced me to just about everyone I know in comics, which I think is going to be pretty clear every time we have guests on where it's like, oh, how did we meet? Well, Liana, or, oh, well, Marie. And I look forward to that. And then I think I've also talked to you more often than some people I've grown up with at this point, because now we're doing that weekly D&D game too.
I know, right? And I cannot believe we've been doing that since March, I think it was.
I can't either.
Ugh. And for your listeners, if they aren't listening to this when it releases, we are currently mid-August, which, Jesus, where did August go?
Yeah.
I got lesson plans to take care of. Holy crap.
I got just everything else to take care of.
This summer flew by. It's been my first summer vacation since I was proper summer vacation since probably I was 18. So almost 20 years now.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever not worked.
Because even when I was school, I worked for my summer vacation. So it's been a minute. And I mean, I've been working this summer, but with comics being on pause, it hasn't been as much work this summer. And
actually taken time to relax and unwind.
It's been glorious. And added bonus, I'd been scrambling to try to find a Switch because I didn't realize there wasn't one until it was too late.
Yeah.
And then one of my dearest friends was able to find one and gift me one for my birthday back in June. And so there's been a lot of very chill Animal Crossing in my life this summer.
That's the only thing I can do that my brain doesn't try to make into work and monetizing is just play a video game.
It makes me so angry. Like right before I got the SCAD job, maybe like 6 months, 7 months prior to that, I took glass blowing lessons in St. Louis, where I was living before I came down to Savannah. And because I needed a creative outlet that I couldn't monetize. And I was so shit at it that there was no way in hell I was ever going to be able to monetize it, but I loved it so much. It was like totally metal and magic all at the same time.
That's so good. Yeah.
And then I moved down here and I was thinking, well, maybe the school has a hot shop. No. Maybe the community has a hot shop somewhere that I could just rent glory hole time at. And yes, it's called a glory hole. Snicker.
I thought you said something else. I was like, I'll allow it. I'll just ignore.
Nope, it's in fact called a glory hole, but it's
Wow.
not, because not named after those things. It goes back to the early church days when there were the. Anyway, I'm getting off base. This is not comics.
I'm still interested. Yeah, we'll get back on track.
Sorry.
Tell me about that at some point too.
But yeah, so I haven't been able to do any of that glass work since I moved down here, and I'm distraught. I need to find some other like creative outlet that I can't monetize, which is tough, but we'll figure it out. I'm thinking maybe I'll start building models or something. Buy a bunch of Fimo and make small things. I don't know.
I'm into just writing for fun. Like I've been writing a little novella that I dropped off of, but I just, if I want to do something with it later, I can, but it's just for fun.
Maybe I'll do NaNoWriMo, whatever, the write a novel in a month thing. Maybe I'll do
I can't do those because then I'll just feel guilty because I was raised Catholic, so I'm built to be guilty. And I'll just be guilty if I fall short of, like, I was like, oh, I'll do 500 words a day, and then I missed 2 days. I was like, so good news, my life is over. And then I was like, this is just supposed to be a leisure hobby.
Bless your heart. I was not raised Catholic, but I was raised St. Louisan, which is Catholic adjacent, and I understand completely where you're coming from. Yep. Raised in definitely, my parish had the best fish fries during Lent, hands down. St. Louisans. St. Francis for life.
By the river, I was like, I don't know about fish in St. Louis. Midwest, there's a big chunk of the Midwest I don't think you should ever get seafood.
It's fried fish, my dude.
Well, like... yeah, you're right. That's fine. I'm from New England, so the fried fish is still good here.
Yeah, I'm not gonna say like go out and get like scallops and a tuna steak or something in Missouri, but like you can get your ass some fried catfish for the month of Lent, or not month, but you know what I mean. Month and change. Right. Sure beats a Filet-O-Fish at McDonald's, but
that's.
So what am I drinking today?
What are you drinking?
I am very thrilling and very exciting. I am not a big drinker myself, so I have myself a nice big steaming hot cup of this. It's called the Churchill Blend. It is a smoked black tea that is sold through my favorite tea shop in St. Louis, and I've been missing home, so I ordered some to have that delivered to me. So a nice super duper smoky, super duper caffeinated black tea. So
that sounds excellent.
Way too hot for today in Georgia, but I'm not much of an iced tea girl, so what you gonna do?
I'm having a big cup of water. And I was thinking about having some fresh squeezed orange juice, but I'm not going to get up now. So that counts as a drink.
That ship has sailed. Yeah. And it's also noon for your listeners, so like I don't blame you for
Well, it can be any time for them. So I want to be kind of on their time. So whatever time they think it is what works best for me.
Right, it's water, wink. Or maybe there's vodka in that orange juice, wink.
No, I did that too much, and then for a year, orange juice, the smell of orange juice made me think of vodka, and I was like, no, I just want orange juice. I've got to get back to that reality. So I just didn't have any vodka ever, and then now I can enjoy it again.
Good, I'm glad you got back to it, because orange juice is tasty, especially when it's extra pulpy.
I'm not a pulp guy. I'll allow it, but I'm not. If I get the choice, I'm absolutely throwing that shit out.
I definitely like weird texture chunks in my beverages.
Oh, you like kombucha, don't you?
Oh, that's the one I don't do.
Okay,
good. That's not the texture. That is the flavor. I don't like fizzy vinegar. Like it just.
I don't I don't
Nope.
like anything about it. So
No. So, but I am definitely like a bubble tea girl.
oh yeah, bubble tea.
And not just the boba. Like, throw some red bean in there, throw some green bean in there, throw some. When we were in Taiwan, it was really popular at the time to do oh bless, dragon fruit, like the dragon fruit seeds.
Oh,
Oh,
interesting. I
super
would
good.
try a sip of that, but I don't think that's for me.
Oh, yeah, you gotta like weird things in your drinks.
I
I
either do or I don't. There's nowhere in between.
mean,
That's
you can get just the milk tea, but like, why spend the money on a milk tea
yeah, yeah.
if you're not gonna get any of the fun, like the
I'll at least
boba
get
or
the
anything in
boba.
it?
I at least like that stuff.
Oh, that's so good. I miss it. There's not a decent bubble tea down in Savannah, whereas like St. Louis definitely has a couple of really, really good shops, and I am missing it. Womp womp. But it is what is.
Yeah. Okay. So you kicked around a couple topic ideas with
I landed on the Goodall Institute, the Goodall Institute versus Gary Larson, just because that was a little bit more of a soundbite and a little bit less of a history lesson.
okay. Yeah, I intentionally didn't look up anything about this because I so far have known nothing about any of the topics that we have had, and I'm going to see if I can't keep that trend going.
Nice. Well, this one's a fun one, and I figure it, you know, you're going to have enough listeners that are probably of an age that didn't grow up with the funny pages. So I thought this would be kind of a fun little bon mot to share. And I love it. It makes me laugh. So
All right, I'm here for it.
I will go ahead. I'm going to give a little bit of background first. So, since, like I said, I'm sure there's a number of your listeners out there who didn't grow up with the funny pages in their life, or otherwise managed to miss out on one of the top two comic strips of all time, at least in my humble opinion. I rank Calvin and Hobbes and The Far Side at the top of my list, but I am partial, obviously, because I definitely did grow up with newspapers in the household, and that actually was my first introduction to comics, was the funny pages. um, and so we got Gary Larson, and for those who don't know, Gary Larson's an American cartoonist best known for The Far Side, which was a single panel comic series. I speak English good. You would not know that I lecture for a living.
Flawless.
Actually, I stumble all over my tongue in class too. My students, they just got to deal with it. Womp
I
womp.
did it as soon as I hit record. I get it.
You just got to laugh it off and roll with it. So, right, Gary Larson, American cartoonist, Far Side, a single panel comic that was syndicated internationally. It ran for 15 years, ran in almost 2,000 newspapers worldwide. He got his start back in the mid 70s. He was drawing comics for a local magazine, and then later the Seattle Times, this was the proto Far Side called Nature's Way, and which eventually got picked up in 1980. And the San Francisco Chronicle was like, oh my gosh, we like this. We're going to promote this for syndication, but we gotta change that name. Nature's Way wasn't cutting it. And so they're like, can we call it The Far Side? And unlike Schultz, who resented his publisher-induced title Peanuts, Larson had no qualms. He was quoted saying, they could have called it Revenge of the Zucchini People for all I cared. And so the name was changed to The Far Side, and, there we go. One of the probably one of the most famous, at least of the current era, but if not all times, comic strips was born in 1980. And he, over the course of the 15-year run, The Far Side, he did, like I said, it ran in nearly 2,000 newspapers. It spawned 23 book collections, 16 collections, 5 anthologies, 2 retrospectives, 22 of which of these books have all been bestsellers. He's won a ton of awards. It's been translated into more than 17 languages. It was this wonderful strip that really touched a lot of lives from 1980 to 1995, myself included. And then he did retire, and we didn't really hear too much from him in the interim, although just this year, on his website, he started sharing comics again, although not doing daily strips, but he had in the recent years had fallen in love with digital drawing and found that drawing was fun again. And so he wanted to share what he'd been working on. And so it's wonderful to have his weirdness back in the world. And that's just it. Like The Far Side, I think one of the reasons why, at least I know why it was popular with me, was like it was weird. It was just strange. And like sometimes the jokes were funny just because they were just bizarre. But sometimes like it was a very kind of a surreal sense of humor, oftentimes based on like uncomfortable social situations or improbable events, lots of anthropomorphic views of the world and logical fallacies and impending bizarre disasters and, you know, references to like proverbs and idioms and things. But, you know, all of this in a single panel a day. And it was just, when you're a kid and you see this strangeness in the paper, like half the time I probably didn't get the jokes, but like it was
well, you felt like you did enough.
I felt good, and I felt it was nice to see something that was like I couldn't guess the punchline, which is hard to do with a single panel. Like, but like, you know, a lot of like your standard comic strips have rhythms and have patterns. And I would read the funny pages every day, twice on Sunday, because I would always read the colored pages, you know, the colored funny pages twice through. Especially because I also had the pleasure of growing up during the era of Calvin and Hobbes, and those Sunday strips, Jesus Christ, you guys, like, if you have not read Calvin and Hobbes or The Far Side, my dears, my darlings, go out immediately and do so. They are fantastic.
I've never read, I don't think I've ever read any Far Side. I've read a bit of Calvin and Hobbes.
Oh my God.
Don't know that I've read any Far Side.
Oh my, and like that's the nice thing about The Far Side is this, it's just, like I said, it's one panel comics. Like they're just these weird, funny little bon mots, and they're just so easy to just take down and just devour. And Calvin and Hobbes is a strip that just is actual art, literal art, like, and so ages like a fine wine. The older I get, the more I can, especially the more I draw, and the more I write, the more I can just see, Jesus Christ, what Bill Watterson was doing on the page was, and he was doing it in a daily format, you know, with those beautiful full color strips on Sundays, like, whew. But we're not here talking about Calvin and Hobbes. We're talking about Far Side. So, and I'm almost to the topic for the day, but I just wanted to give a little, because a fun fact about Larson was he didn't grow up, or he didn't formally study art. He loved drawing when he was growing up, and he loved natural sciences. But he he didn't train to be a cartoonist. He didn't train to be an artist. But this love of science carried with him as he started to cartoon. And so like you see a lot, especially the natural sciences, and a much love and respect for the scientific community pop up in the comic, even with, you know, tongue firmly planted in cheek. And like, you know, over the course of his career, there, like in 1985, the California Academy of Sciences premiered a collection of 400 of his original strips, and in this the Far Side of Science exhibit that traveled across North America, including to like the Smithsonian Institution. And like in 88, one of the most prominent science writers at the time, like, did the intro to the Far Side Gallery 3, the book, and cited him as the national humorist of natural history. He has a chewing louse named after him, the Strigophilus Gary Larsoni, and oftentimes paleontologists will refer to the distinctive array of previously unnamed tail spikes on a Stegosaurus as the Thagomizer, thanks to one of his cartoons. So there was a lot of love and respect and dialogue between Larson and the scientific community, which makes what is to come that much more like, oh my goodness, oh bless.
I might spoil. Is this like the Jane Goodall Institute?
Yes.
Okay, wow. I was thinking that as I was typing this episode title. Okay. Yeah, I'm ready for that.
So we've established who Gary Larson was, what the Farsa was. He loves science, and so um, back when the strip was running, there was no Twitter right to directly harass a creator on, so folks had to lodge their complaints via snail mail sent to Larson's Syndicate. So which actually, if you want to see some of the wildest reader responses, I recommend picking up the it's called The Prehistory of the Far Side, a 10th anniversary exhibit, which I recommend anyways, if you're a Far Side fan and don't know of its existence, because goodness gracious, if that was the 10th anniversary, that must have came out in 1990. So yeah. I am definitely dating myself right now, y'all. Womp womp. While most of these responses are, hilariously baffling misunderstandings of a strip, I mean, like, what are cowl tools after all? Or flack received over, for example, perceived dog car carnal relations, and so they're pretty funny, but the response to one strip in particular has absolutely tickled me since I first read about it as a child. So basic setup: we have this single panel, and we see a pair of chimpanzees sitting in a tree, and the female is grooming the male. And we know she's a female thanks to the ubiquitous cat eye glasses that Larson would often use as a gender shorthand. And she examines a hair that she's pulled off of her mate, and the caption reads, "Well, well, another blonde hair. Conducting a little more research with that Jane Goodall tramp?" So funny, not a little bit absurd, but ultimately inconsequential, right? Which also for your younger listeners, if people don't know who Jane Goodall is, she is a one of the world's foremost experts on chimpanzees and chimp behavior, and spent many years of her life actually in Africa with chimps, studying them. So I apologize. I probably should have set that up as well.
These people will be listening, and they'll be online, and they can Google, and I'd recommend it.
Google. So the strip came out. It's funny. It's silly. But not even a week after the strip's published, Larson's Syndicate receives a very indignant letter from the Jane Goodall Institute representative. And both Larson and his syndicate are read the Riot Act. And the letter even includes vague threats of future litigation. And an excerpt from the letter reads, "To refer to Dr. Goodall as a tramp is inexcusable, even by a self-described loony as Larson. The cartoon was incredibly offensive and in such poor taste that readers might well question the editorial judgment of running such an atrocity in a newspaper that reputes to be supplying news to persons with a better than average intelligence. The cartoon and its message were absolutely stupid." And so, which is, it's kind of a very funny response to a gag that this chimpanzee is cheating with Jane Goodall, which it's silly. But Larson is horrified, absolutely mortified. Not so much about maybe getting sued, which would suck, but mostly because he deeply respects Goodall and her contributions to primatology. As previously mentioned, she's a hell of a name in the science community, especially the natural sciences, and Larson was a huge fan of the natural sciences, and I guess is still. I keep talking about him in the past tense. He's still alive and kicking, obviously, but alrighty. So Larson and his syndicate receive this horrible letter, and there's these vague threats of litigation, and he is so upset that he could have potentially offended one of his science heroes. But before he even has a chance to write an apology, his syndicate gets another letter about the strip. But this time, it's a letter coming from the National Geographic Society. And so the National Geographic Society, also for all y'all kiddos who didn't grow up with a grandparent who probably had mountain high stacks of old back issues of Nat Geo in their basement like I did, National Geographic was and is one of the foremost sort of popular science magazines. But they also fund a ton of research around the world. And so the National Geographic Society had a big centennial issue coming up at the time, and they wanted to reprint the cartoon in this special issue of the magazine.
I thought they were going to be mad too, but no, they're all for it.
They're all for it. They dig it. They love it. They're like, this is hilarious. We want to put this in the National Geographic Society magazine, which is big deal. And not just any issue, but their centennial issue. And considering what just happened, Larson's editor declines and explains why. Hey, Goodall's not hip to this, and we might get sued, so let's not do this. And Nat Geo is shocked that Goodall would threaten to sue over the strip. In their words, that doesn't sound like the Jane Goodall we know. And so they decide to get to the bottom of it, and Nat Geo actually reaches directly out to Jane Goodall, not to her institute, but actually to her, who, surprise, surprise, had not only had no clue at all to the shenanigans that were going on in her name, but also loved the strip herself. She thought it was hilarious and a wonderful honor. So phone calls were made and tempers were assuaged, and the uppity folks in the Institute were put in their place. And the comic ran in the centennial issue of Nat Geo. And the Goodall Institute ended up printing it on t-shirts as a fundraiser. And an extra little nice little cherry on top for all of the stress that poor Larson had to go through, he got to go visit Dr. Goodall at her famous research facility in Gombe, and got to meet her, and which obviously, like, man, I don't know about you, but like that, out of all of that, not getting printed in Nat Geo, not, being like the poster child for this, fundraiser for this great institute, but like getting to go and hang out with Goodall and her chimps in Gombe would have been like a dream, right?
Yeah, it's like whatever the opposite of insult to injury is, where it worked out and then it continues to work out. I don't know.
It ended up as best as possibly could have, and that goes to show that if you're going to cancel someone in the name of another, better check with the injured party first.
Yeah, that's not at all how I thought this was, because of how you had written it to me, that it was the Goodall Institute versus Gary Larson. I thought this was going to be some kind of dramatic lawsuit courthouse battle between science and comics.
And it could have very well almost been.
Yeah. I just love that it ended up being kind of a sweet little miscommunication more than anything.
Isn't it though? It's one of my favorite little comics bon mots, because it happened, it ends so happily, but there's all this wonderful like miscommunication and like people getting their dander up, and it just makes me laugh. So I hope your audience enjoyed that one today.
I enjoyed it, so I imagine they will. I can't. Did you also memorize all those dates, or do you have notes?
Oh, I totally have notes.
Okay, because the way I was like, her flow of speaking right now sounds like she just knows all of this, and I was like, man, I can't do that.
I get paid to do that 4 times, well, actually 8 times a week, because I lectured twice a day, Monday through Thursday, when class is on. So 30 weeks a year, 2 times a day, 4 days a week. That's what I get paid the big bucks for.
Well, thanks for doing it for free for us here.
The first one's free, but then you have to pay me for it if you ever have me back on.
Okay, no. We'll bill listeners. We'll find a way to track anyone that's listened and just send them a little invoice.
No, this was absolutely my pleasure. Like I said, it's such a fun story to share, and I don't know, I like talking about this stuff. It's
Yeah,
good times.
that
And
was a great.
hopefully some of your younger listeners or your listeners who didn't grow up with the newspaper in their life go and seek out The Far Side, and also while you're at it, Calvin and Hobbes, because yes,
I'm,
please.
I didn't grow up with the newspaper. I mean, I would buy it for my parents like every Sunday on our way home,
Oh.
but I don't think I ever read them. I would look at them.
We got it delivered to my door every day, and I would automatically like pull out the funny pages. They were in the quote unquote everyday section in the St. Louis Postage Batch, and I had a very specific order of I read the strips I hated first and saved my favorites for last. And I read all of them, like Brenda Starr and Andy Capp and Mark Trail, like all those shit strips. Like I read them. I
I've
didn't
never
like
heard of
them.
any of that.
Oh my goodness. Oh bless. Oh honey, you are so. I'm not that old. I just
No,
turned
you're
35.
not. You keep
Like
saying
I'm
that
not
like
that old.
you're like my grandmother. No, you're not old at all.
But it's like I'm just old enough that like weird things like growing up with the newspaper and things like that are.
Yeah. Enough change in between our formative years, I think, that
Yeah.
you're saying things like, I have heard tell of that. And then I'm still not in touch with teens now. So,
Oh my god. Yeah, I get even less and less in touch. Like my students get younger and younger, and like they weren't like some of them weren't even born in the 90s, and I'm just like, "Oh my gosh, you
I know,
baby angels."
I worked with a girl when I was in college, and I was like, oh, yeah, like her and I are friends. And she's like, yeah, I was born in 2000. I was like, I can't be friends with you. I was like, I can't respect you at all. You can't be anything in my life. It's so weird.
2000, I was a senior in high school.
I was 5, but still, like in my
Oh.
mind, when I was 20 and I met a 19-year-old, I'm like, you're a child. And yeah,
It is funny though how that goes. Like, obviously, we've got a little bit of an age gap here, but I consider us friends and I enjoy your company very much. But there are days when I'm just like, I'm like, oh, that's right.
yeah,
That's a mid-20 baby angel.
yeah, there are days when people are talking to me, and I have some other friends who are like comics friends who are like in their 40s, and they're telling me about something. I'm like, man, I never knew about that. I don't know anything about that. They're like, oh, you remember you pick up these issues? I'm like, no, those are older than me.
And that was why I was like, you know what? I know Gary Larson, and everyone my age and older will know Gary Larson, but I was like, I might want to include a little bit of an introduction to him in The Far Side, because, like,
I appreciate that too. I think it just really works. All of that kind of blends together to be perfect. I think it wouldn't have hit as much for you to be telling us about Larson being upset about Goodall's
yeah, you
threatening to
need to know how
sue if
much
you
he
hadn't
loves and
emphasized
respects
like, oh,
science.
he's
And
yeah.
I do
Like,
also love, I wish it was more than just like a footnote, but I do love that there is a louse named after him.
I
The
yeah.
Thagomizer. Jesus.
Well, I'll have to share some of that when we post this episode. I'll just post a bunch of Larson related
Yes. If
natural
you can,
science.
you should be able to find I mean, like obviously there's his website with The Far Side and everything, but like if you can find like a picture of like the louse and like the strip with the Thagomizer, and then of course the Jane Goodall strip and everything, like those would be nice little extra things to throw up there. But
Yeah, I'm.
I love
Who knows?
Larson.
And let's see. I'll reach Gary Larson if you're listening to this. We'd love to have you on.
Oh my God, Gary Larson, if you're
I
listening to this,
highly.
my name is Kate Sherron, and I love your work, and I am a huge admirer. And thank you so much for all of the wonderful inspiration and laughs, and teaching me that it's okay to be weird, and that weird is funny, and smart is funny. Thank you, Gary Larson. Not that you're listening to this, but if you are,
You
thank
know
you for
what?
being smart and
Someone,
weird, funny.
someone that might know him might listen to it and might send him an email,
Oh
and
my
then he
God.
might send us a cease and desist. Who knows?
He might very well. He might be like, that's not how that, like, or like, she just pulled my notes from the prehistory book.
I won't tell anyone.
It's research. And I
Yeah,
cited my source. It's straight, I pulled it straight from the Prehistory of the Far Side, which I do recommend for anyone who is a fan of the strip. Like, go get it. It's fantastic. It's still in print. Like, and get all of his books and everything. Like, show him some love. It's so funny. His stuff's so funny.
Kate, thank you so much for coming on the show and for teaching me. Do you have anything you want to promote, or like all your social media or anything semi-current, because I don't know when this is coming out?
So you can my social media is really easy to find. My username is Kate Sherron, KateSherron. And it's just at Kate Sherron, one word, at Instagram, at Twitter. My website is katesherron.com. My email is katesherron@gmail.com. I got in early and I got in good. So, I'm a brand,
I love that you
baby.
put your email in here. You're like, please contact me through my email right now.
And so, so like, feel free to follow me up. Reach out if you guys have any questions about anything. Because I have some projects in the work, but nothing. Chained to the Grave has been announced, but we had to push back its publication until, I think it's not going to drop until February. Which Chained to the Grave is a 5-issue creator miniseries that I'm doing with the beautiful and talented Brian Level and Andy Eschenbach, two absolutely stellar loves of my life. And they wrote me a delicious Western horror, like a very psychedelic supernatural Western horror to draw, and that will be coming out early next year. So that's the most current thing I can plug professional wise, but keep an eye on my social medias. I'm always chatting on there. Students, feel free to reach out if you have any questions, even if you're not a student, if you're on student age. I'm always happy to play mentor to anyone who needs a little bit of help or has some questions or just needs professional ear. So my DMs are open, my dears.
I saw some of those covers, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I cannot wait for that. But yeah,
those covers are, and they like, I haven't even we obviously haven't released all of the covers, and they're really weird.
I can't wait to see them. But yeah, Kate, thank you. You're amazing. I'll see you in a couple days for D&D.
Yup.
And that's it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. This was a blast.
It was my treat.